Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. I am doing Criminology's Read What You Own a challenge, where my husband has picked out 100 books from our bookshelves, wrapped them up, given them a number, and I am reading them one at a time, hopefully not buying any more books until I've read some of them I have on my shelf. Now, the book I have read is Jens Bjørneboe's Before the Cock Crows, which is a form of both journalistic but also interpretivistic writing about some of his work after the Second World War. So this is very much inspired by true events that he was privy to learn about while working as a journalist, but the way it is structured is fictional. And that then also the character names are fictional. The persons in this book is made up, but everything else is described as they truly were. So this book is so there's two stories in one. One is the main character I, which we interpret as being Jens Bjørneboe, who travels to Germany after the Second World War and is trying to figure out what is actually happening with the German people now that the war is ended. And he describes very vividly, some beautiful descriptions of a war-torn country, about people who are filled with bitterness, a lot of them hurt because of the war, and the people who are trying to help the Germans who have survived. Then it goes into, so while doing this work, he is introduced to someone called Max. And Max used to be a doctor, a very young doctor, who was hired to do some medical experiments in a concentration camp under the Nazi leader of the camp and the main doctor for the experiments. And especially the doctor is then not interviewed because he dies or is not contactable. So the journalist gets in contact with the doctor's son and wife, and it's the interviews with especially the wife that is one of the sources for the main part of the book, which is scenes, but mostly also discussions between Dr. Reinhardt and Heidebrandt. So Heidebrandt is the Nazi leader of it, and Reichbrand is the main doctor. And they keep having discussions of all of the medical experimentation that is being done in this concentration camp that the two of them are running. Not necessarily if this is good or bad, because both are this is just what's happening. But more the fact that why is what they're doing justified? Because they have two different theories of why it's justified. So especially towards the end, Dr. Reinhardt is talking a lot about the difficulty of doing medical research if you have to actually be aware of the people you're doing research on when you can't really do whatever you want to do. And that hinders, of course, the medical advancements that you can do, according to him. So it's so much easier to sort of learn about, for example, anesthesia or vaccinations, or sort of how the body works and functions, if you can just use humans as experimentations. While again, and I keep forgetting what his name is, and I'm sorry about that, Heidebrand. Heidebrand is more in regard to Nazi ideology. He's running the camp because he wants money and he wants power, and this is the way he can get it. In that sense, Heidebrand, for anyone who has read Hannah Arendt's a book about Eichmann, Heidebrand sort of reminds you very much about the way Eichmann argued for why he did the things that it did, which is absolutely gruesome things. So this book is one of the first books that he wrote, and he would later do his sort of magnus opus, which is the history of bestiality, where it tries to go in depth of all of the evilness in humanity. So you can very much see that this is some kind of precursor to that work, where he is trying to understand why are we humans willing to do all of the bad things that we humans are willing to do. He has some absolutely wonderful prose in the way that he writes. And I'm just going to read an example now. This is, of course, my translation of it. Max had worked with the Station for Euthanasia and Experimental Medicine. He had had his education there, and the last fine-tuning which had made him to the person he was today, a man who would murder his mother for a cigarette. So that's pretty much gives you kind of the tone that the book is, and both sort of the prose of it, but also the things that it talks about. Why would someone turn out to be someone who would kill his own mother for a packet of cigarettes? Because these humans exist, and probably more sort of not necessarily during the Second World War, because people weren't really questioning what they did at the time, but more afterwards. And he has a very interesting afterword as well. So if you get an edition of this book, I would recommend trying to get one with the afterword, because he, for example, talks about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which again is the theme of medical experimentations and how humans sort of have been used for medical experimentations without the people being sort of participants, willing participants for it. And one of the things that he, for example, talks about that I wasn't aware of, I knew about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but what I didn't know was that they actually used two different types of bombs, where they used uranium on Hiroshima and plutonium on Nagasaki. So again, he sort of links this with the things that he's talking about with the experimentations in the concentration camp with, well, why are you going to use two different ones unless it was to some kind of understanding of how plutonium and uranium works differently as materials for bombs, so that the bombing is also kind of medical experiment. It's a very heavy book, as you probably can guess. There are a lot of heavy themes in it because, of course, what he is trying to understand is why are people willing to do these types of things. I think it's an important book. I think it's kind of a cliche to say that it's more important now than it was when it was written. I'm not really even sure that's true, because this absolutely was a book that needed to come out at the time when you were trying to work through the trauma of the Second World War. But I do think that this is an important book to read now, because one of the things that it points to is, of course, what are we willing to accept happening to our outgroup or our enemy, or to people that we don't like, as long as the people in our inner group says that it's okay. In a world where we become more and more divided, being reflective of who says that this is okay and why am I accepting certain things is an important thing to reflect about, because we are historically very good at accepting horrible things happening as long as it's to someone else. Not one of mine, but one of theirs. And as long as it's someone of mine saying that it's okay, either that being someone I follow politically, ideologically, or through my interests, ideology. In this case, medical interest and my sort of medical people above me medically that I follow and see as one of mine. And I know that we are living in tough times where there's so much stealing our energy. But I also think that is also when we need to, not all of the time, but some of the time, read certain books that just keeps us not completely losing the plot, because that is the power of books. Even if it might require a lot of us. And that's why I do not read just books like this, luckily. But sometimes we need books like this to remind us to not forget the fact that we do have choices and a voice. So I am very interested to know if you have either read this book or if you're interested in reading it, but also what other types of books that you think are important to read in this day and age, even if it might cost you a lot of energy. Let's recommend things to each other down in the comments down below. And I need to find my next read. So I have in my little used salsa jar green notes with numbers, and we are going to find one quite randomly, and it's going to be 37. So book 37 is the next one on my list, and that is probably at the, well, that was 34, and then we have 21. It's on the bottom of my bag, so excuse me a moment. 37. It doesn't look like it's going to be a very big book. And my husband wrapped all of these books, so I have no idea what is in them. But this is Kathy Acker's New York City in 1979. This is Penguin Modern Classics, which my husband and I are very interested in, so we're trying to collect all of them because there are relatively short texts from a lot of different interesting authors. So it's a great way of sort of being introduced to a lot of different authors. And Kathy Acker, I've not read anything of her. I've heard of her, but just reading on the back, a tale of art, sex, blood, junkies, and whores in New York's underground from cult literal icon Kathy Acker. So this is going to be my next read, and thank you for listening to me screaming into the void.